The Grand Council chamber of the Valdron Empire stretched higher than most species' tallest buildings. Crystal pillars held up a ceiling that showed the stars themselves, a reminder that the Valdron ruled over 3 entire spiral arms of the galaxy. Emperor Krethva sat on his throne, his silver scales catching the light from 1,000 glowing orbs. Around him, his advisors and generals stood in perfect formation, their uniforms decorated with medals from hundreds of conquered worlds. Today was supposed to be a simple day. The Empire had found another primitive species in a remote star system. The resources there would fuel the Empire for decades. The location was perfect for a new military base. It should have been easy. But then the Whispers arrived. The Whisper Collective was old, so old that nobody remembered when they first appeared in the galaxy. They were small gray beings with large eyes that seemed to see through time itself. They never took sides in wars. They never joined empires. They simply traveled, watched, and remembered. When they spoke, wise leaders listened. 3 whispers floated into the council chamber. They moved without walking, their robes never touching the ground. The room fell silent. Even Emperor Krethva leaned forward on his throne. "Great Emperor," the lead whisper said, its voice like wind through leaves. "We come with a warning about the species you plan to conquer, the ones who call themselves humans." Krethva waved a clawed hand. "We have studied them. They are primitive. Their ships barely travel faster than light. They fight among themselves constantly. They will fall like all the others." The whisper's large eyes blinked slowly. "That is what concerns us, Emperor. You have not studied them enough." The whisper gestured and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a blue and green planet, the third from its yellow star. "This is their world. Earth, they call it. Let us show you what you face." The hologram changed. It showed creatures with fur and claws, much larger and stronger than humans. "Humans are not the strongest species on their own planet," the whisper explained. "Yet they are the dominant species. Do you know why?" A Valdron general laughed. "Tools, weapons? All species develop these. Persistence," the whisper said quietly. "Humans evolved to chase their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They can run for days. They heal from injuries that would kill most species. They adapt to environments from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. They simply refuse to stop." The hologram showed human history, wars that killed millions yet the species survived. Ice ages that should have ended them yet they endured. Diseases that swept across their world yet they recovered. Again and again the humans faced extinction. Again and again they survived. "Look at this," the whisper said, showing images of human weapons. They split the atom and made bombs that could end their own world. They made diseases that could kill billions. They created artificial minds that could think faster than they could. Each time they stood at the edge of destroying themselves. Each time they stepped back, barely. But they learned. Another general stepped forward. "This proves they are dangerous to themselves, not to us. Our weapons are far superior." The whisper turned those ancient eyes toward the general. "You misunderstand. Humans are dangerous precisely because they know how to destroy themselves and choose not to. They understand restraint born from horror. But remove that restraint. Threaten their existence and you will face something you have never encountered." The hologram showed more recent human history. Their first satellites, their first steps on their own moon, their first ships beyond their star system. They went to space not for resources or conquest, the whisper said. They went because, and I quote a human, "it was there." They explore for curiosity. They risk death for knowledge. They form emotional bonds with species that are not their own. The Emperor shifted on his throne, growing impatient. "What is your point, Whisper? That they are curious and sentimental? These are weaknesses, not strengths." "No, Emperor," the Whisper said firmly. "Let me show you what happens when you threaten a human." The hologram showed footage from human entertainment, their stories and myths. Heroes who fought impossible odds, soldiers who never surrendered, leaders who rallied their people from the edge of defeat. Humans tell themselves stories about never giving up, the Whisper explained. They make legends of last stands. They celebrate those who fight even when victory is impossible. This is not just their culture. This is their psychology. When you corner a human, when you threaten their home, their family, their species, they do not calculate odds. They calculate how much damage they can do before they fall. The chamber was quieter now. Some of the advisors looked uncertain, but Emperor Krethva stood from his throne, his full height imposing. "I have heard enough," he declared. "The Valdron Empire has conquered over 400 species. We have crushed rebellions that lasted decades. We have broken civilizations older than these humans' recorded history. They have what we need, and they occupy space we want. Your warning is noted, Whispers, but it changes nothing." The lead Whisper bowed its head. "We expected this answer. We have fulfilled our obligation. We have warned you." The three beings turned to leave, floating toward the massive doors. At the threshold, the lead Whisper paused and looked back. "There is an old saying among the species we have watched, Emperor. A proverb that survives across 1,000 worlds." The Whisper's eyes held something that might have been pity. "Never corner a predator that has nothing left to lose." Then they were gone. Emperor Kretheva returned to his throne and gestured to his military commanders. "Prepare the annexation fleet. Standard protocols. 200 warships should be more than sufficient for a species that barely has 50 armed vessels." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "We will give them the standard 72 hours to surrender. When they accept their place in the Empire, we will show the Whispers how misplaced their concern was." The generals saluted and left to prepare. The advisors filed out. Soon, only the Emperor remained in the vast chamber, looking up at the stars displayed on his ceiling. Somewhere among those lights was the yellow star called Sol, and orbiting it a blue planet called Earth. The Emperor had no doubt about the outcome. The Valdron Empire always won. It was the natural order of things. The strong conquered the weak. It had been true for 3,000 years. He did not know that in 72 hours his certainty would crack. He did not know that this small primitive species would become the Empire's greatest nightmare. He did not know that he should have listened to the Whispers, but he would learn. The galaxy would learn, and the lesson would be written in fire, blood, and the stubborn refusal of a species that simply did not know when to quit. The Valdron fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, like a swarm of metal locusts. 200 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. The fleet had been assembled, briefed, and deployed in less than a month. For the Valdron Empire, this was routine. Admiral Thexnor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Absolute Dominion, watching the tactical display. The third planet, Earth, glowed blue and green on his screens. He could see the primitive human satellites orbiting it, their communication networks buzzing with panicked signals. They had detected the fleet. Good. Fear made surrender easier. Communications, Thexnor ordered. Broadcast the standard annexation terms. All frequencies. The message went out in every language the Valdron had decoded from human transmissions. The terms were simple. Surrender. Accept vassal status under the Empire. Provide access to all resources. Provide soldiers for the Imperial military. Serve and your species would be allowed to continue existing. The humans had 72 hours to respond. Thexnor expected the usual pattern. First would come denial and outrage, then desperate diplomacy, then calculation of odds, then acceptance. It always went the same way. The strong ruled. The weak submitted. This was the order of things. The human response came in 12 hours. A single transmission, brief and clear, sent from what appeared to be a unified planetary government. Thexnor played it on the bridge. A human female appeared on the screen, her face showing no fear. She spoke in English, translated by Valdron computers. "This is Secretary General Martinez of the United Earth Coalition. We have reviewed your demands. Our answer is no. Earth is not for sale. Humanity will not be conquered. Leave our system now." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then one of Thexnor's officers laughed. "They refused." "They actually refused?" Thexnor felt a moment of surprise, then amusement. "They need a demonstration. Clearly they do not understand what they face." He studied the tactical map. "There. That island in what they call the Pacific Ocean. No population centers. Scan confirms it is uninhabited. Perfect for a demonstration." 3 orbital bombardment cruisers broke formation and moved into position over the island, their weapons charged, gathering energy that made the air itself shimmer. Then they fired. The island vanished in light brighter than the sun. When the light faded, nothing remained but glass and steam. The ocean boiled. The shockwave rippled across the Pacific. Every human on Earth with access to news saw what Valdron weapons could do. Thexnor waited. Now would come the surrender. Now would come the desperate pleas for mercy. He had done this 100 times before, but humanity did not surrender. Instead, something happened that Thexnor had never seen in his 40 years of conquest. The humans united. Within hours, every nation on Earth was sharing technology that they had kept secret from each other for decades. Military networks that had pointed weapons at each other the day before were now coordinating defense plans. Corporate research labs opened their doors to governments. Weapons programs that had been forbidden by treaty were suddenly authorized. Civilian ships were being armed. Factories were being converted. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we are detecting massive data transfers between all human nations. They are sharing everything: weapons data, ship designs, industrial capacity. And sir, they are mobilizing their entire population. Every human with technical skills is being recruited for their war effort." Thexnor frowned. "How long until they realize this is futile?" "Sir, I do not think they care about futility." 48 hours after the ultimatum, the human fleet emerged to meet them. It was pitiful. Maybe 60 ships cobbled together from mining vessels, exploration craft, and transports hastily fitted with weapons. The Valdron fleet outnumbered them more than 3-1. Valdron ships were purpose-built war machines with shields and armor. Human ships were civilian craft with missile pods welded to their hulls. It should have been a massacre. It was, but not the massacre Thexnor expected. The humans did not form proper battle lines. They did not attempt coordinated fleet maneuvers. They did not try to match the Valdron ship to ship. Instead, they attacked like madmen. Human ships accelerated to ramming speed, their crews apparently willing to die just to damage a Valdron vessel. They deployed nuclear weapons in ways that violated every rule of space combat, not caring about the radiation that affected their own ships. They sent small fighter craft into the hangar bays of Valdron cruisers, then detonated those fighters from inside. "Sir, the destroyer Endless Sky reports a human ship has collided with it," his tactical officer reported, his voice shocked. The human ship was full of nuclear warheads. "The Endless Sky is gone. Both ships destroyed. Another collision, sir. The cruiser Pride of Valdera, a human mining ship filled with explosives. Sir, human fighters have breached the hangar of the Righteous Fury. They are self-destructing inside the ship." Thexnor watched in growing horror as his tactical display showed Valdron ships winking out of existence. The humans were losing. They were losing badly. For every Valdron ship destroyed, they lost 5, sometimes 10 of their own. But they kept coming. They kept fighting. Every single human ship fought until it was destroyed. Not one retreated. Not one surrendered. "How?" his weapons officer whispered. "How can they fight like this? Do they not value their own lives?" Thexnor suddenly remembered the whisper's warning. The humans celebrated last stands. They made heroes of those who fought impossible odds. This was not a military to them. This was their nature. After 6 hours of combat, Thexnor had lost 31 ships, nearly 15% of his fleet. The human fleet was almost completely destroyed. Only a handful of their ships remained, retreating back toward Earth's orbit. But those human ships were not running away. They were regrouping. "Admiral," his intelligence officer said quietly, "I am receiving reports from our ships." The crews are shaken. They have never faced an enemy that fights like this. They are asking if perhaps we should negotiate. Negotiate? The Valdron Empire did not negotiate with primitives. But Thexnor looked at the tactical display and did something he had never done before. He ordered a retreat, pull the fleet back. "Establish a blockade at the edge of the system. We will cut off their resources and wait for them to exhaust themselves." He turned to his communications officer. "Send for reinforcements. And send a message to the Emperor. Tell him the humans are resisting. Tell him we need more ships." As the fleet withdrew, Thexnor stood at the viewport and looked at the blue planet. Down there 7 billion humans lived. 7 billion beings who had just watched their fleet get destroyed but had not surrendered. 7 billion beings who now knew that the Valdron could be hurt, could be killed. For the first time in his career, Admiral Thexnor felt something he had not felt since he was young. He felt uncertain. The whispers had been right to warn the Emperor. But it was too late now. The war had begun, and Thexnor had the terrible feeling that the Empire had made a mistake. A very, very serious mistake. 5 years. The war had lasted 5 years, and it should have been over in 5 months. Commander Xylith stood in the observation room of the Mars Occupation Headquarters, looking out at the red landscape. Somewhere in those canyons and caves, human rebels were hiding. They attacked every week, sometimes every day. They destroyed supply convoys, sabotaged equipment, killed Valdron soldiers who wandered too far from base. The occupation of Mars had cost more lives than the conquest of the last 3 species combined. She turned back to the security monitors. On one screen, she watched the prisoner holding area. 50 human captives sat in the yard. They should have been broken. They had been prisoners for months. They were given minimal food, forced to work, punished for the smallest infractions. They should have been hollow shells by now, like prisoners from other species. Instead, they were laughing. Xylith could not understand it. One human was telling a story, making exaggerated gestures. The others were making sounds the translators identified as laughter. They were mocking their guards. They were joking about their situation. Some were singing songs that her translator said contained words about freedom and defiance. How do they do this? She asked Lieutenant Vornax, who stood beside her. How can they maintain morale when they are defeated? Vornax, who had been in this war from the beginning, shook his head. They do not see themselves as defeated. That is the problem. In their minds, as long as one human still resists, they have not lost. Xylith pulled up another file. Battle reports from the asteroid belt. Human pirates, they called themselves, operating from hidden bases in the rocks. They salvaged wrecked Valdron ships and somehow, impossibly, figured out how to use Valdron technology. They reverse-engineered weapon systems in months that should take years. They modified Valdron engines to work with human power systems. They were learning, adapting, evolving their tactics every single day. Look at this, Vornax said, bringing up a tactical report. 3 Valdron transport ships disappeared last week. We found them yesterday empty, crews dead, cargo stolen. But here is what concerns me. The crews were not killed in combat. They were poisoned. The humans somehow infiltrated our food supply and poisoned only those 3 ships. That requires intelligence networks we did not know they had. Xylith felt a chill. They are inside our supply chain? Deeper than that, Vornax said grimly. He pulled up classified reports. 2 months ago, a Valdron supply officer on the space station Omega was arrested for treason. He had been providing information to humans. Do you know why he did it? Money? Threats? Friendship. Vornax laughed bitterly. A human prisoner taught him chess. They played every day for weeks. They talked. The human asked about his family, his homeworld, his children. By the time we caught him, the supply officer believed the war was wrong. A human made him question the Empire through simple conversation. This was worse than Xylith had thought. The humans were not just fighting with weapons. They were fighting with words, with ideas, with emotions. They made their enemies see them as people rather than targets. We need to separate our soldiers from all human contact, Xylith said. Too late, Vornax replied. Do you know what happened last week on Titan? A Valdron patrol found a human settlement. Standard protocol is immediate arrest or elimination. But the humans offered them food, offered them shelter from a storm. By the time backup arrived, our soldiers were sitting around a fire, eating human food, listening to human music. The patrol commander reported the settlement as empty. He let them go. Xylith turned to look at him. That is treason. That is the 73rd incident of Valdron soldiers showing mercy or helping humans, Vornax said. We are not just fighting a war. We are fighting against our own troops starting to sympathize with the enemy. The door opened and Captain Drenka entered. She looked exhausted. She had just returned from Earth's orbital blockade. You need to see this, she said, activating a hologram. It showed Earth from orbit. The planet should have been dark and dying by now. 5 years of blockade, no trade, no outside resources. The humans should be fighting each other for scraps. Instead, Xylith saw lights. Cities still glowing. Space elevators still operating. Ships still being built in orbital construction yards. How? Xylith asked. How are they still functional? They recycle everything, Drenka explained. They have converted their entire economy. Nothing is wasted. They grow food in buildings. They mine their own garbage. They have fusion reactors powering their cities. And they keep building ships. Smaller ships now, cheaper ships, but they keep building them. Drenka changed the image. It showed a human ship, barely more than an engine with a cockpit and a missile attached. They call these Vengeance-class fighters. 1 pilot, 1 missile, faster than our interceptors. The pilot guides the missile to the target, then ejects. Usually. Sometimes they do not eject. Sometimes they guide the missile all the way in. Suicide attacks, Fornax said quietly. No, Drenka corrected. They do not see it that way. I have listened to their communications. They volunteer for these missions. They see it as sacrifice. They leave messages for their families. They record goodbyes. Then they launch, and they are proud to do it. Syleth sat down heavily. This war was supposed to be simple. Occupy the system. Extract resources. Force compliance. But the humans had turned it into something else. They had turned it into a test of will, and the Valdron were starting to fail that test. I have more, Drenka said, her voice dropping. Our intelligence has intercepted human communications. They are planning something big. The word they use translates to Vengeance Protocol. They have been gathering resources, building in secret. We do not know what it is, but every indication suggests they are preparing a major offensive. That is impossible, Syleth said. We have 400 warships in this system now. We control Mars, the Belt, the outer moons. They have maybe 200 functional ships, all smaller than ours. What can they possibly do? Fornax walked to the window and looked out at Mars. 5 years ago, I would have agreed. But I have learned something about humans. When you think you have them cornered, when you think they have no options left, that is when they are most dangerous. They do not think about odds. They think about how much damage they can do. A message appeared on Syleth's console. It was from Imperial Command. Emperor Krethva himself had issued new orders. The occupation was taking too long. The costs were too high. Other vassal species were starting to rebel, inspired by human resistance. The Emperor had authorized the final solution. Syleth read the orders and felt her blood turn cold. 5 planet-killer dreadnoughts were being deployed to the Sol system.
In 1 month, they would arrive.
They would crack Earth's crust. They would boil its oceans. They would end humanity permanently. This is genocide, she said quietly. This is war, Drenka replied, but she did not sound convinced. Syleth thought about the prisoners in the yard still laughing despite their captivity. She thought about the rebels in the Martian caves, still fighting despite impossible odds. She thought about the Whisper's warning that the Emperor had ignored. Never corner a predator with nothing left to lose. The planet killers would arrive in 1 month. The humans would find out in days, probably, and when they learned that their world was going to be destroyed, when they knew that their species faced total extinction, what would they do? Syleth was afraid she already knew the answer. They would make the Valdron pay a price so terrible that the Empire would remember it forever. The war was about to enter its final phase, and Syleth had the horrible feeling that even victory would cost more than the Empire could afford. The 5 planet-killer dreadnoughts arrived in the Sol system like harbingers of the apocalypse. Each ship was 10 kilometers long, built for one purpose, to destroy worlds. They had cracked 17 planets in the Empire's history, turning rebellion into extinction. Now they pointed their terrible weapons at Earth. Admiral Thexnor watched from the bridge of the Absolute Dominion as the dreadnoughts took up positions around the planet. He felt no joy in this. He had argued against it in his reports to the Emperor. This was not war anymore. This was extermination. But the Emperor wanted the human problem ended, and what the Emperor wanted, the Emperor received. Broadcast the message, Thexnor ordered. The transmission went out to Earth on all frequencies. Humanity had 1 week to evacuate any civilians on off-world stations and colonies. Then Earth would be destroyed. There would be no negotiation, no last-minute surrender. The decision was final. Thexnor expected panic, chaos, desperate evacuation ships fleeing the planet. Instead, something else happened. Earth went silent. No transmissions. No communications. Just silence for 6 hours. The Valdron fleet waited, monitoring, wondering if perhaps the humans had finally broken, if their spirit had finally shattered in the face of total annihilation. Then the responses began. Every human colony, every station, every ship sent the same message. 2 words in every human language, broadcast on every frequency, repeated over and over. Remember Earth. Thexnor felt ice in his veins. This was not surrender. This was a promise, a threat, a declaration that even if Earth died, humanity would never forget. Never forgive, sir, his intelligence officer said, voice shaking. We are receiving reports from across the Empire, all our occupied territories, all our stations. Humans are activating. Sir, they have sleeper agents everywhere. The board lit up with red alerts. Sabotage on Kepler Station. the main supply depot for this sector. Explosions in the Valdron Military Academy on Proxima Base. Data networks crashing across 3 systems. Human prisoners staging uprisings on 12 different worlds. It was coordinated, precise. They had been planning this for years. How? Vexenor demanded. How did they infiltrate so deeply? They have been preparing since the war began, his intelligence officer explained, pulling up files. Every human we captured, every worker we employed, every prisoner we released as a show of mercy. They were gathering information, learning our systems, finding our weaknesses. Sir, they have corrupted our navigation databases. They have planted viruses in our logistics networks. They have turned our own infrastructure against us. On Earth, the silence broke. A transmission came from the planet, from Secretary General Martinez. She appeared on screen, older now, scarred, but her eyes burned with cold fire. You want to destroy our world, she said simply. Very well. But understand this. If Earth dies, the Valdron Empire dies with it. We have prepared for this day. We call it Operation Terran Vengeance. Every human in the galaxy has their orders. We will burn your supply lines. We will destroy your bases. We will make every world you occupy too expensive to hold. You will kill us, but you will choke on our ashes. The transmission ended. Is she bluffing? An officer asked. Vexenor looked at the tactical display. 12 uprisings, 7 major sabotage events, and those were just the ones they knew about. No, he said quietly. She is not bluffing. The planet killers began charging their weapons. It would take 36 hours for them to reach full power. 36 hours until Earth died. The countdown had begun, but humanity had a countdown of their own. 24 hours before the planet killers would fire, the human fleet emerged from behind Earth's moon. Not the small, efficient ships they had been building. Something new. Something insane. Sir, I am reading 73 human ships, the sensor officer reported. But they are strange. The readings do not make sense. It is like they have multiple faster-than-light drives on single hulls. Overlapping. Unstable. Vexenor understood immediately. The humans had reverse-engineered Valdron FTL technology, but they had not perfected it. These ships were bombs. Unstable FTL drives that would tear space apart if they activated. They are going to ram the Dreadnoughts, he whispered. Not with normal drives. With FTL drives. They are going to jump directly into them. That is impossible, his science officer said. The collision of FTL fields would create a cascade reaction. It would destroy both ships. The energy release would be catastrophic. Send a message to the Dreadnoughts, Vexenor ordered. Tell them to go to full alert. Launch all fighters. Shoot down every human ship before they get close. But there were too many. The human ships came from every angle, burning their engines, accelerating to impossible speeds. The Valdron fighters tried to intercept them, but the humans had escorts, small ships that ran interference, sacrificing themselves to let the bigger ships through. One human ship reached Dreadnought Alpha. Its FTL drive activated at point-blank range. The space around the Dreadnought twisted, folded, and then exploded in a flash of light that blinded every sensor in the system. When the light faded, both ships were gone. Just debris and radiation. No, Vexenor breathed. Another human ship reached Dreadnought Beta. Same result. A flash of light. 2 ships erased from existence. The human ships kept coming. Every single one was crewed. Every single one had volunteers who knew they were going to die. Vexenor watched as, one by one, all 5 planet killers were destroyed. All 73 human ships were destroyed with them. Over 5,000 humans died in the attack. But Earth survived. Admiral, his communication officer said, tears in his eyes. We are receiving a transmission from Kepler Station. It is under attack. A human fleet appeared from nowhere. They have weapons that we do not recognize. Sir, they have a planet killer of their own. They built it in secret. They are firing on Kepler Station. Vexenor pulled up the feed. He watched as the massive supply depot, the linchpin of all Valdron operations in this sector, exploded. Hundreds of supply ships, thousands of tons of weapons and fuel, gone. The entire Valdron fleet in the Sol system was now cut off, isolated, running on whatever supplies they had left. The board continued to light up with alerts. Human uprisings on 17 worlds now. 2025, the Empire was losing control, and all because they tried to destroy one species that refused to die quietly. Sir, what are your orders? His tactical officer asked. Vexenor looked at Earth on his screen. The planet still glowed blue and green. Humanity still lived, and every Valdron ship in the system now realized the terrible truth. The humans were not trying to win. They were trying to make victory cost more than the Empire could afford. And it was working. "Send a message to Fleet Command," Thexnor said, his voice hollow. "Tell them the planet killers have been destroyed. Tell them Kepler Station is gone. Tell them the humans have turned this entire sector into a war zone that will bleed us dry." He paused, looking at his officers. Good Valdron. Loyal soldiers who had followed orders without question. Now they looked scared, uncertain. They had joined the military to serve the Empire, not to commit genocide against a species that fought like demons. "And tell them," Thexnor continued, "that I am recommending immediate withdrawal from the Sol system. This war cannot be won, not at a price the Empire can afford." It was treason to even suggest retreat, but Thexnor did not care anymore. He had watched humans sacrifice thousands of their own to save their world. He had seen coordination that should have been impossible. He had witnessed a species turn their extinction into a weapon. The whispers had been right. Humans were dangerous, not because they were strong, but because they simply refused to accept that some things were impossible. They did not know when to quit, and that made them the most terrifying enemy Thexnor had ever faced. 8 years. The Sol War had consumed 8 years of the Valdron Empire's resources, pride, and future. The cost had been calculated by Imperial accountants, and the numbers were staggering. Over 1,000 warships lost. 3 major supply depots destroyed. Tens of thousands of soldiers dead. 17 occupied worlds in open rebellion. The economic damage was causing inflation across the Empire's core systems. Trade routes were disrupted. The population was questioning why so many resources were being spent to conquer one primitive species, all for a single star system, all because an emperor had ignored a warning. Emperor Krethva sat in his council chamber, but it felt different now. The crystal pillars seemed dimmer. The star ceiling seemed to mock him with its vastness, reminding him that the Empire's control was not as absolute as he had believed. Around him his council members stood, but they no longer looked at him with respect. They looked at him with calculation, with judgment. "The fleet commanders are refusing your orders," Council Member Zixra said bluntly. "Admiral Thexnor has sent a formal petition. He says one more assault on Earth will cost another 200 ships. He says the humans have fortified the planet to the point where taking it would be Pyrrhic at best." "Then replace him," Krethva snarled. "Find a commander with courage." "All the commanders agree with him," another council member said. "And it is not about courage, Emperor. It is about mathematics. We cannot afford this war anymore." Krethva slammed his fist on the throne. "I will not be defeated by primitives. Send every ship we have. Conscript more soldiers. We will crush them." The council chamber was silent. Then Zixra spoke again, her voice careful. "Emperor, we have reports from 37 worlds where human resistance tactics are being copied by other species. They have seen that the Empire can be hurt, can be bled, can be made to retreat. The Sol War is inspiring rebellions across the Empire. If we do not end this soon, we may lose more than one star system." Before Krethva could respond, alarms blared. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing urgent military traffic. Commander Xylith's face appeared, broadcasting from Mars. "Your Majesty," she said, and her voice was strained. "The fleet commanders have made a decision. They are contacting Earth directly. They are bypassing your authority. They are offering peace." "What?" Krethva roared. "This is mutiny. I will have them all executed." "With respect, Your Majesty," Xylith said quietly. "They do not believe you can. Half the military is with them. They are tired. They want to go home." The transmission shifted. Admiral Thexnor appeared, broadcasting from the Absolute Dominion. Behind him, Krethva could see other fleet commanders. "A unified front. Secretary General Martinez," Thexnor said, addressing the humans. "I am Admiral Thexnor of the Valdron Imperial Fleet. I am contacting you without authorization from my Emperor. I am speaking for the commanders of the Sol expedition, and we wish to discuss terms of withdrawal." There was a long pause. Then Martinez appeared on screen. She looked exhausted. Earth looked exhausted, but her eyes were still sharp. "Withdrawal?" she asked. "Not our surrender?" "No," Thexnor said. "We are asking for peace. We will withdraw all forces from the Sol system. We will provide reparations for damages. We will establish a demilitarized zone around your territory. In exchange, humanity ceases all military operations against the Empire and recalls all agents. Martinez was quiet for a moment. Behind her, Krethva could see human leaders conferring. They were talking, arguing, debating. Finally, Martinez turned back to the camera. "We accept," she said, "on one condition. The Valdron Empire formally recognizes human sovereignty. No future claims on our territory. No future annexation attempts. We want it in writing, signed by your emperor." Thexnor looked directly at the camera, directly at Emperor Krethva. "Agreed," he said. "The emperor will sign. Or there will be a new emperor." The threat was clear. The military was done with this war. If Krethva refused, he would be replaced. The empire's structure was cracking, and it had cracked because of one species that simply would not break. 3 days later, the Treaty of Solar Peace was signed. Emperor Krethva signed it because he had no choice. The military had made their decision. The council had made their decision. Even his own guards looked at him with doubt now. He signed the document with shaking hands, knowing that his legacy was now forever tied to the Empire's first retreat, first defeat, first failure. The Valdron fleet withdrew from the Sol system over the course of a week. They left behind Mars, the asteroid belt, the outer moons. They left behind equipment, supplies, even some wounded who chose to surrender rather than travel. They left behind the wreckage of over 1,000 ships, monuments to the war's cost. Admiral Thexnor was the last to leave. He stood on the bridge of the Absolute Dominion and took one final look at Earth through the viewport. That blue and green planet had cost him everything. His career, his honor, his faith in the Empire. But it had taught him something. Some species could not be conquered because conquest required the enemy to accept defeat, and humans simply did not know how. On Earth, humanity celebrated, but it was a quiet celebration. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. Millions dead, cities destroyed, resources depleted. Earth would take decades to fully recover, but they had survived. They had kept their freedom. They had proven that they could not be broken. Secretary General Martinez stood in the ruins of what had once been New York City and watched the last Valdron ship disappear from the sky. Around her, humans were already rebuilding, already planning, already preparing for the future, because that was what humans did. They survived. They adapted. They refused to quit. 2 weeks after the treaty was signed, a small ship arrived in Earth orbit. It was a whisper vessel. The Whispers had returned, as they always did, to observe history's turning points. Martinez met with them in a conference room in the rebuilt United Earth headquarters. The lead Whisper floated across from her, those ancient eyes studying her face. "Congratulations," the Whisper said. "You have achieved what few species accomplish. You have made an empire retreat." "We paid a terrible price," Martinez replied. "All victories have prices," the Whisper agreed. "But you taught the galaxy something important. You taught them that some species cannot be conquered because they refuse to accept conquest. The Valdron Empire is weakening now. Other vassal species are rebelling, inspired by your resistance. The Empire will not fall tomorrow, but it has begun its decline, because of you." Martinez was quiet for a moment. "You warned them." "The Emperor. You told him not to attack us." "Yes, he did not listen. Few leaders listen to warnings about their own limitations." The Whisper tilted its head. "But that is why we are here now. To formally welcome humanity to the galactic community, not as victims, not as conquerors, but as a species that has earned respect." "Respect for what?" "For being dangerous," the Whisper said simply. "Not dangerous because you are violent. Many species are violent. You are dangerous because you do not know when to quit. You calculate odds, then ignore them. You face impossible situations and find ways to make them possible. You turn your own desperation into a weapon. That is why we warned the Empire. That is why we welcome you now." Martinez smiled slightly. "So we're the galaxy's scary species now?" "You are the galaxy's unpredictable species," the Whisper corrected. "And that makes you more dangerous than any weapon. Because no one can calculate what a human will do when cornered. Will you surrender? Will you fight? Will you find a third option no one else considered? That uncertainty is power." The Whisper floated toward the door, then paused. "A final piece of advice, Secretary General. The galaxy has been watching your war. Some species are afraid of you now. Some admire you. Some will want to be your allies. Some will want to test you. Humanity is no longer unknown. You are now the species that made an empire retreat. Use that reputation wisely. Then the Whispers left, returning to their ship, their role as observers and messengers complete. Martinez walked to the window and looked out at Earth. Construction crews were working around the clock. Orbital platforms were being rebuilt. The space elevators were operational again. Humanity was scarred but not broken, hurt but not defeated. Her communication device beeped. It was a report from the deep space monitoring stations. Several alien species had sent diplomatic requests. They wanted to establish relations with humanity. They wanted trade agreements, defense pacts, technology exchanges. The galaxy had noticed Earth, and now everyone wanted to talk to the species that had survived. Martinez smiled. The Valdron had tried to conquer humanity and failed. They had tried to break human spirit and instead broke their own empire. They had ignored the Whisper's warning, and now they were paying the price. The galaxy had learned a lesson written in fire, blood, and 8 years of stubborn human resistance. Never underestimate a species that does not know when to quit. Never corner a predator that has nothing left to lose. Never ignore a warning about humans. Because humans, against all logic and all odds, simply refuse to lose. And that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy.